Okay, can we achieve this without a change in attitude? Because the former Senate president talks about what Nigerians need is a change in attitude, not necessarily restructuring.
Well, when people talk about restructuring, at least the sense in which I understand it, they are talking about the fundamental architecture of the state. For instance, how can we decentralize power? There seems to be a lot of concentration of power and responsibilities at the center. How can we devolve power to the states? I think that is what restructuring ultimately means. But you see, in Yota, that is not the end of the story. The tendency these days, when people talk about restructuring, seems to be that the moment we devolve power away from the center to the states, all of our problems are going to end. That is not correct. In fact, to whom much power is devolved, much responsibility ought to be expected. We are seeing a very heated debate around restructuring, but unfortunately we are not seeing a corresponding emphasis on good governance, on public accountability, on how we can deliver service to our people who do not have the opportunity to come to the studio to talk like this. So this mechanistic understanding of restructuring, meaning that the more and more power we give to the states, the better things will be for our people, is just not supported by history. For instance, in Yota, you remember there was a lot of clamor for decades about how we needed to create more states in order to, quote, bring government closer to the people. Well, we have 36 states now. Do we have government closer to the people? I don't think so. Instead, what we are having is more and more political and economic alienation. By the same logical extension, anybody who believes that, well, if we devolve more powers from the center to the states, some of our problems are automatically going to go away. Is not taking the analysis to the fullest possible extent. I believe that to whom much power is given, much accountability, much corresponding responsibility ought to be expected.
Okay, so it's more, you're aligning with the former Senate president in terms of attitudinal change from the top to the bottom.
Well, I think it's more about good governance. How can we make sure we deliver the service to our people?
Can you deliver good governance if you're behaving the same way you were behaving when you were...
Of course not. Of course not. There has to be change across the spectrum, from structural change to change of attitudes, to even change in the policies. Because, at the end of the day, a lot of the policies that we implement, reflect the values, or should reflect the values of the state. Right now, as I said, there is the tendency to exclude certain people from the governance process. If you're not in the ruling party, for instance, in any of the states, or you're at the center, your ideas are not tolerated. The tendency is to think that, well, this person is not part of us. I think we need to completely rethink our political attitude in order to make sure we are delivering the best service to our people.
Okay. Mark?
Well, Mr. Austin Tam-George, happy Independence Day to you. It's good to see you. Just wondering, you also agreed in your time that there was quite a number of, there was enthusiasm that you noticed yesterday. Maybe it would even flow into today, we do not know. But what do you think, in your opinion, informs that enthusiasm, that happiness that it is Independence Day at all?
Well, we haven't taken a different trajectory. The alternative would have been, a disintegrated country. We've seen problems all over Africa. We saw the genocidal attacks that happened decades back in Rwanda. We've seen all kinds of traumas of nationhood in other countries. Even in the so-called advanced societies, we have all kinds of problems, all kinds of challenges of citizenship and nation building. I don't think that the alternative is to despair. I think we should rise to the challenge of leadership by rethinking, recalibrating public policy, by making sure that, as I said, we look at the structure of the country, because some of the problems we face arise from structural injustice. So individuals who populate our political structures may in fact do well, might even mean well, but if they're operating within a structure that is faulty, you find that they can't maximize the delivery of service. For instance, we still have this false, ridiculous, dichotomy between federal and state roads. So you find that, some roads that run through certain states are just dysfunctional because they've not been fixed over the past 30, 40 years. But if these roads are ceded, to the state governments. So look, fix it. We have more resources to allocate to the states and, fix these roads. The tendency is that more of these roads will more likely to be fixed. But is that the end of the analysis? I don't think so. I think that simply giving more and more responsibilities to the states will not solve our problems. I think we should have, proportionate emphasis on good governance. The idea that simply restructuring the country will bring the best possible goods to our people, as I said, is not supported by history. We've seen situations where, more and more people seem to believe that, for instance, I'm from the Niger Delta, do we control 100% of the resources found in my area? Will that, end the problems of development and marginalization in the region? I don't think so. I believe that even if you don't have good governance structures, if you don't have accountability, even if you have 100% control of resources, your problems will be far from over. So I think that we need to expand the debate to include emphasis on good governance and accountability. We need to focus much more on the privatization of the state by politicians, rather than simply talking mechanically about simply restructuring the state.
I think you've answered the second question. I was going to flow from that, but I was wondering, what do you think? I mean, in terms of, you have talked about how, yes, Nigerians were enthusiastic. What do you think informs their enthusiasm about independence?
We have no other country except Nigeria. And so while we continue to face the problems of development, we recognize, I think, that we have no choice but to work for the development of the state. I strongly believe that we can have all the debates of development while working within the concept of unity of the country. But unfortunately, the more and more people feel disentitled and excluded from their own country, they are alienated from the economic sphere. There are so many millions of young people who are willing to work, but are simply unable to find work. There are so many people in certain regions who feel that they can't be found in the structures of the state. And so the more and more people we have feeling disentitled by their own country, the more separatist tendencies we are likely to see. Because if you don't feel that you are a stakeholder in the system, you want to undermine it. You want to undo it. You want to be seen on the other side of the fence. So I think that the more and more inclusive process we're able to inaugurate, the better for the country.